Hi everyone, welcome to the shop. My name's Eric Meyer. Today I'm going to show you how I made this steel-soled wooden miter plane out of some Osage Orange. All right, so I'm starting with a piece of Argentine Osage Orange. So this has been milled once, and I have a video on that I'll leave a link down in the description for. And the long and the short of it is I milled it once and then I let it acclimate. So if it's going to do any kind of moving, it'll do it now before I take it to final size. And, before I get to the next step in getting this to the exact final size that I want, I'm starting off on the surface plate with some sandpaper, just because this wood likes to tear out, and I want this nice and flat, but with no tear out. So we're going to sand it flat, and there's not too much. It's not really too far out, but it's worth taking the time to get it right, right from the start. So then the next step there was sending it through the thickness planer to get the top side parallel, and then back to the granite plate because it left some tear out. And now with all of that done, I can shave it down on the table saw, and there's not much to take off at this point. These are pretty close to final dimension after the initial round, and so it's really just a matter of getting it to length and width. And for the width, I'm leaving it about a 1/16 over, and we'll take it all the way down later after the sole is installed. And so I'm going to go ahead and put my maker's mark in it now, and I'm just getting the surface wet with some alcohol, and just helps to loosen those fibers up a little bit, and then give it a couple good whacks. And so for this plane, it's going to have a low cutting angle, and it's going to be a bevel down plane. So I'm going to mill the bed in at 40 degrees. And this wood has a Janka hardness of like 2380, so it's up there on the hardness scale. And that really isn't something that I wanted to try to mortise out by hand. And so having this benchtop mill has been a big help in getting all of this roughed out. Now it's time for some handwork, and so I'm going to go ahead and open up the mouth so I can get my chisel in and out of there. And we're going to start off with just the drill, and then I have this keyhole saw that I really like for hand plane work, and that lets me get into that mouth pretty quickly, and then we'll just finish up the rest of that bed and mortise with chisels and some floats. And then I'm using a 1-2-3 block here just to help keep my chisel cuts nice and square to the plane sole. And I want the very end of the bed to be square. I don't want a feather edge on it, just because that's going to be a little fragile. So if it's just a teeny bit square, I can after the sole is on, I can take it down just a little bit more. But in the meantime, while I'm working on it, I just want a little extra strength in it. Previously, what you saw me doing was using a blunted chisel to help scrape the bed, remove the high spots. And now I've taken a plain blade that I wasn't completely happy with that I had made, and I have done the same thing. I've turned it into basically a wide blunt chisel, and it lets me take the bed down evenly across the entire width. And so the risk with a narrower chisel is that I could dig in more so than I want. So having a very wide tool for that purpose helps out tremendously. And so now I am working on the sole, and this was one of those things where I wanted to, take the bed so far, and then I can use the measurements from the bed to transfer those to the sole and make sure that I have everything exactly where I want it. And it's a pretty similar process to working on the bed. You do a layout, and then I'm using the mill to get everything roughed in. And after the mill, it's going to be a handwork to get everything trued up. And so this is just a little, I guess, jig that I made. It just has all the screw placements, and what I've done here is I've clamped it to a couple of soles, and then I can just drill straight through those. It'll guide my drill bit to exactly where I want, and I can make all of the soles the same, and I don't have to sit there and measure out the screw hole locations on every sole that I do. So well worth the time to make that drill guide. With that done, now I will countersink all of those screw holes. The reason I didn't countersink it first was just because it offered a little more meat when I went to go do the transfer punch. And so then here I am epoxying the sole to the plain body, in addition to using the screws, and I'm making sure the screws are all clocked. And so the epoxy is really just there. The screws are going to do the big work, but the epoxy is just there as a secondary holding method. It's kind of like a belt and suspender situation. So now you may have noticed that when I was milling in that mortise, there's just one big mortise. There's no way to actually hold the blade into the plain body. And so this is what this part that I'm making now, that's what it's going to do. So this is going to go in there. I'm going to glue it in later, and it will hold the wedge with the plain body, and then also a kind of gives it another, it'll also guide the shavings when you're trying to eject those. And this is something I did in for the plane I made in the previous video. I'll leave links down in the description for that as well. I really liked how that turned out, so I wanted to try it again on some bigger planes this time. And so now I'm going to go ahead and epoxy this in, and I'm using a wedge to help guide it into place. And that's all cut to the angle that I need everything to be to actually be able to hold the blade in. And with that piece glued in, I'm going to go ahead and drill and install a stainless steel rod. I don't think this is ever going to be needed. This is just another one of those belt and suspenders type situations. It's just really going in there more so for my own peace of mind. I don't ever think it's really going to be necessary, but just trying to offer a little more strength to that insert. And then the top part of that section, I left a little proud. And I used a couple different kinds of wood for that, so the main part is more of that Osage left over from when I made the body. But then on top, I glued in a piece of walnut for one of them, and then a piece of spalted sycamore for the other one. And so after the top got planed down, I just can grind down the tip of that pin, and then off to the bench sander to flush everything up to the sole. And one of the things I was really trying to do here was avoid having the sander touch the metal sole, just as a way to, trying to prevent sparks more so than anything. Mostly just because I didn't want sparks flying into my dust collector. it's time to make the wedge. So this is some more of the canary wood. This was a bunch of stuff I had left over from when I made the coffin smoothers a couple videos back. I can leave links for that if you want to check that out as well. And so I had enough of this left over, but not quite enough to make another hand plane out of, but plenty to make some wedges out of. And this little mill worked out really well for making the wedges. Holding everything becomes the problem. You certainly don't need a mill to make wedges. I've done it, bandsaw and then a hand plane, everything to shape, and that's worked out really well. It's really just a matter of how do you hold things effectively as they get smaller. So with the wedge made, that's all of the components. So I'm going to go ahead and sharpen up my blade and get it put in there and start giving this, running it through its paces, give it some testing. And, I'm real happy with the way it's cutting. I've got no complaints. It took a little bit of fiddling to just make sure that everything was working exactly the way I wanted it to. But with all that done, now it's time to make it look pretty. And this is just some oil, just some linseed oil that I've, thinned down, put the first few coats on real thin, let it soak in, and then I'll come in later with some full strength coats later and just get it all finished up over the course of a week or so. So, and then here's the finished plane. It's 8 inches long with a 1.5 inch wide blade. So it is a bevel down plane and it's bedded at 40 degrees. So it's got a lower cutting angle on it. And that's perfect for end grain or burls and softwood or even really straight grained hardwoods. One has a spalted sycamore inlay on it and the other has a walnut inlay. And these are both currently for sale. You can purchase either by visiting my Etsy shop or if you want to save a few dollars directly from me. And I will leave all of that information down below in the description. Now, with all that said, please do not feel pressured to financially support me. Watching these videos is more than anyone could ask for, and I sincerely appreciate your viewership. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.